Victor Wembenyama on the roster. How do you make this team better? Because look at that number. This is what stands out at $43 million.
Would San Antonio dip their toes in the deep end and make a run at Damian Lillard?
But this is a look at all the assets San Antonio has to build around Wemby. Plus, enough cap space for a max superstar free agent. So what will they do now?
What do? They've got a lot of trade assets and draft picks and lots of salary cap space. Will they try to surround Victor Wembanyama with another star or some veteran role players to help teach him the ropes?
Veteran point guard Cameron Payne is coming to San Antonio for a second-round pick.
He's the third veteran floor spacer that the Spurs have traded for, all of them on expiring contracts.
We're not done. You know, we got to continue adding to that mixture of things that allows us to grow, but we're excited about the players and what we have to start with now.
Coming into the 2023 offseason, the Spurs had decisions to make since they had 7 free agents in the team. They also had needs in certain positions to build around Victor Wembanyama and the team's young core. Well, it's been long enough and a lot of deals and signings have been made since the offseason, and it's more clear to see where the Spurs are leaning towards this upcoming season. We'll be looking at the trades and signings, but first, we'll look at the 3 players that departed the team, starting with the only one to sign with the new team at the time of this recording, Keita Bates-Diop, who signed with the Phoenix Suns on the first day of free agency. He will be joined by former Spurs Drew Eubanks and Chimezie Metu, filling out the roster spots they need after the Bradley Beal trade. Whether he starts or comes off the bench for the Suns, there's no doubt that he'll bring the little things that help win games. The dude is a stud when it comes to being a role player. I'm sure a lot of Spurs fans will wish for him to succeed. The guy started out with the Spurs barely getting any minutes, and now he'll be providing valuable playing time with an automatic contender in the Suns, with KD, Booker, and Beal leading their charge. Best of luck to KBD. The next one up is the last player we traded for in the Derek White trade 2 seasons ago, Romeo Langford. Last offseason, he was brought back as he missed a lot of games in the later half of his initial year with the Spurs. But this past season felt pretty much the same, missing almost half the season, just couldn't stay healthy and didn't show enough improvement to warrant the Spurs to keep him, despite only being 23 years of age. With the Spurs not extending a qualifying offer, it signified that they made the decision to move on from the young wing. Best of luck to Romeo Langford. Last out of the departures is Gorgui Dieng. A true veteran on a young rebuilding team, the man brought invaluable guidance to the team all of last season, having the young core's best interest, one of the organization's trusted community leaders, and the voice of the huddles before every game last season. Gorgui was known for being a constant professional. Before the trade line last season, the team waived him to make roster space and then re-signed him on a 2-way contract to keep mentoring the young squad. The guy was the best vet of the team last season, and we should all appreciate his time with the team. Now that we're on the next stage, he was there for the young guys in the team's absolute lowest in this rebuild. So thank you, Gorgui, and good luck to you. Now, on to those who the Spurs retained. Obviously, Pop is the biggest move that the Spurs made this offseason. Despite not being a player, he brings a lot on the table in terms of coaching, player development, overall presence, and of course, culture that he himself established in the franchise. His value to the team is way more than what he brings courtside. That's why the Spurs gave him as much as they did. 5 years, $80 million. He absolutely deserves it, and he just beat out Monty's contract with the Pistons. So after Pop, the next biggest re-signing was the team's starting point guard last season, Tre Jones. Most of those outside of the Spurs fan base wouldn't even notice this move, but that's to the Spurs' benefit as they signed him to a team-friendly deal of 2 years, $20 million, and to have one of the league's best assist-to-turnover ratio players. I'm not surprised that they inked Tre on day 1 of free agency, during the man's wedding no less. Now, some might wonder why he only got 2 years. It's probably a trial run where he shows what he can do with the squad building around Victor. If he shows great compatibility and maybe another jump that we're hoping for, Tre won't wait long to get a larger contract with the team, and if it doesn't pan out, then both parties can explore other options sooner, only being locked in for 2 years. But it's a good thing to have him back on the squad, because point guard was a crucial need for the Spurs this offseason, which we address, but more on that later. Up next is Sandro Mamukelishvili, who impressed in his performance last season. The big man signed a 1-year, $2 million deal to stay with San Antonio. Given how short and inexpensive the deal is, this might be a prove-it contract for Mamu, making his contract similar to Trey Jones' deal. But his game suits the 4 position more, which the team lacks at the moment. Mamu has less competition on the 4 spot, only being behind Keldon Johnson and Jeremy Sohan, who were the team's go-to 4 in the past seasons. He's a do-everything forward, can't really argue having him on the team. Another surprise get off of waivers last season was Julian Champagny, who the Spurs signed for 4 years, $12 million. And similar to Mamu, you can't be mad having this guy on the team, especially not after his explosion in the Summer League. Julian can score. In the Summer League, he showed he can get aggressive and draw fouls. If he gets enough playing time this season, we're going to see a lot more out of his arsenal when it comes to scoring. He is also a very reliable defender, not the best, but he's a plus on that side of the floor. Last season, most comps would have him as a young Doug McDermott and have him mentor Julian. It wouldn't hurt, but he's already showed he is more than Doug McDermott 2.0. And lastly, Dominic Barlow. He'll be returning on a 2-way, but there's a reason for that. Simply no roster spot for a regular contract. Despite signing a 2-way, his excellent performance in the Summer League warrants the Spurs to keep him long term. When a spot on the roster opens later this season, he should be the guy they sign for a new deal. And yes, there will be one. The Spurs are definitely gonna make moves before the deadline. If his performance and development continues to improve, Barlow will still be on the team. Not my go-to big to share the floor with Wembenyama, but on his own, he'd be a decent guy off the bench and can develop into a reliable backup big. We know what Pop is capable of, but the players we re-signed are all valued on their continued growth and compatibility with the team. Now we get to the new acquisitions this offseason. Of course, the 3 rookies for this upcoming season, Victor Wembenyama being on a regular rookie contract, Siri Sissoko, who I first thought would be on a 2-way contract, signed a 3-year, $5 million deal, and the undrafted point guard Sir Jabari Rice signed a 2-way contract. For the rest, they weren't signed by the team, rather, we received them all by trades. So we'll look at the trades that brought them to San Antonio. In the first trade the Spurs were involved this offseason, we definitely got unnoticed as the Heat moved Max Strus to Cleveland in a sign-in trade in exchange for a 26 Lakers second rounder from Cleveland. And the Cavs have the Spurs absorb Cedi Osman and Lamar Stevens expiring contracts for a 2030 Cavs second rounder that looks to have no protections whatsoever. The Spurs helped the Cavs make space for their preferred free agent to receive a second rounder and a player to possibly flip for more assets as they waive Stevens to make room for another player we traded for. It's not guaranteed if Osman will be on the team or they move him, but the pick is guaranteed assets at least. In another 3-team trade, the Mavs received Grant Williams in a sign-in trade with Boston and 2 second-rounders, one being Miami's and the other Toronto's, both coming from the Spurs. The Celtics get 2 Mavs second-rounders and a Spurs 2024 second-rounder that was somehow also used on the next trade, but we'll get to that. The Spurs got Reggie Bullock and a first-round pick swap in 2030 with the Mavs, unprotected. Reggie's the largest contract out of the players the Spurs traded for, but he is on an expiring deal. If he's on the roster by the season opener, he'll be one of the vets we'll rely on to mentor the young core. He already has connections to the Spurs GM Brian Wright during their tenure in Detroit. If he's more than his performance on the court, then look to see the Spurs keep him in the long haul. And in the final trade for the Spurs this offseason, the Suns moved Cam Payne, a 25 Pelican second rounder, unprotected, and cash considerations for the same second round pick we dealt to the Celtics in the Grant Williams Reggie Bullock sign-in trade. The pick is listed as protected, no specific numbers for the Suns to receive it, but if it falls within the 55 to 59 range, it goes to Boston. Cam does fill a need at the point and shooting, and his veteran presence is a plus. But the biggest concern with him is if he values being on a contender rather than being a mentor to our young players. Other than that, he's a great fit for the Spurs, and we can still send him to any contenders later on. He'll definitely get playing time with the lack of playmaking on the squad. It's no doubt that these players are great veteran pickups for this upcoming season, and they still are on a rebuild, but now they're more on the development stages. The goals should be to build off of Victor, see which pieces fit him best, find what are the needs for the future, and develop the other young players. The team currently has 18 players under contract, and 2 guys being on 2-ways. Jabari Rice and Dom Barlow fill out the 2-ways, but that leaves 3 extra players, and the one I think that are on the chopping blocks are Kem Birch, who you probably forgot was on the team, Devontae Graham, whose contract may seem large, but it keeps the Spurs over the salary minimum. And the third player is a toss-up between a few players. Mine are Reggie Bullock. Yes, we just traded for him, but his contract keeps us over the salary minimum, and the future pick swap may have been the reason for the trade rather than his services. Cedi Osman, even though he showed interest in playing with Victor, Sandro Mamukelishvili, or Charles Bassey. Now for Mamu, we just signed him to a deal, and Bassey got a multi-year extension last season. But it's common for teams to change their minds with manageable contracts depending on the team's needs and the deals that they make after the signings. So waiving these 2 players is a possible outcome before the season, but I'd rather they stay on the team. And that pretty much covers everything for the Spurs offseason. If you made it this far, it would be really great if you can leave a like if you did enjoy the video. Thanks for stopping by, and till the next time.